Hello and welcome everybody to today's webinar. We are very happy that you have decided to join us today and hope that you will enjoy what we have on the menu for you. My name is Anders and I will introduce you to today's topic and speaker. So today we're going to hear WorkPoint CPO Dominick Cosgrove speak on the topic WorkPoint on top of SharePoint. So he's going to speak about how WorkPoint completes SharePoint and how you can use WorkPoint to get the most out of your existing Microsoft 365 strategy. So as always, if you have any questions about the topics presented, please don't hesitate to ask them in the Q&A section here in Teams. I will be right there, and I promise we'll be able to pick up on whatever questions you might have after the presentation from Dominick. So without further delay, I will hand the stage over to Dominick. So Dominick, how are you today?
Anders, thank you very much. Very good, thank you. Hopefully I'm presenting my screen, you confirm?
Yep, it should be presenting.
Yep. Perfect. And thank you for the introduction. So as Anders says, the topic today is WorkPoint on top of SharePoint, or also bridging the gaps in SharePoint. So who we are, Anders has already done the introductions, but I'm Dominick Cosgrove, and I'm the Chief Product Officer at WorkPoint. So just on the agenda today, so obviously, today is very focused on SharePoint. WorkPoint is built on the whole Microsoft 365 platform, but from our early days, we're built on the SharePoint platform. We've extended into the whole Microsoft 365 platform, but SharePoint is still very key to the whole Microsoft 365 platform, and things like new services like Teams. Well, not so new now, but Teams is built on top of, or a lot of functionality is built on top of SharePoint, similar to Viva, another new product is also built on top of SharePoint. So SharePoint is still very much a key, and it has a lot of good functionality. So I wanted to be able to touch on that. There's also a number of different approaches to implementing a SharePoint solution. So I want to touch on those. And then I want to kind of talk about how WorkPoint actually bridges the gaps in SharePoint and where we see those gaps lying. And then finally, just kind of reiterate, and I think it's the topic of today really, is the whole point of WorkPoint is to make SharePoint easier to use. SharePoint is a great platform, but it has its complexities. And one of the key tenets of WorkPoint is to simplify SharePoint. So SharePoint has been around for a long time. It's over 20 years old now. It's got a hell of a lot of 20 years nearly of benefits of SharePoint. It's got a lot of building blocks and a lot of great features. And these are kind of some of the key ones that I see that are key to any solution built on SharePoint. So it's got all the structural components, things like this, libraries, sites, etc. It's got most solutions built on SharePoint are of a collaboration type. So it's got very much document management functionality, which is things like versioning, metadata, file management. It's got a huge array now of file type supports that it supports, and that's an ever-growing list of file types. Microsoft, over its time, has really invested in the search, and the search has become very intelligent. And the great thing about that is WorkPoint can actually leverage the power of that search to build really powerful solutions. It's got a very granular role-based access security model. So, when you build solutions on WorkPoint, you need to be able to control or on SharePoint, you need to be able to control who has access to what content. So that's extremely important. The tight integration with Microsoft Office, the desktop clients, and now the web client as well, is very important. When you're creating documents, the ability to not only co-author and to create your rich content, but it's also storing and managing that, and that's pretty seamless today. The Power Platform has become more and more integrated. We've had Power Automate and Power Apps for a long time now, but there more you'll see that Microsoft will bring those into SharePoint. So now you have the ability to create and bring in things like Power BI as well onto your SharePoint lists. So that integration is getting tighter and tighter, and we leverage that, and we also enhance that functionality as well. I don't think there's many other cloud providers like Microsoft that can provide the scale and the performance that Microsoft offer. So I think the cloud scale is super important, and SharePoint back in the day was a complex beast to configure and to set up SharePoint environments. Now Microsoft do that and manage that all for you within this 365 platform, but it's at cloud hyperscale. And obviously, one of the key things and why we at WorkPoint have built a product on top of Microsoft 365 is, SharePoint is part of your subscription. So you already have that hopefully within your estate. And what we do is we leverage that and we empower it even more so you can drive adoption and usage of SharePoint. So that's the kind of, for me, the key features and functionality that most solutions use within SharePoint. But we've and this is one of our kind of key messages is, SharePoint built in a totally different way, sort of the WorkPoint way. So obviously you've got standard SharePoint. This is very kind of an ad hoc approach. It's not solution driven. It's about building kind of, simple solutions for a specific need. But you can do it. There's limited templating. I'll show you some of the functionality that's been introduced recently, but the templating in standard SharePoint is still quite limited. You have to do everything manually, so there's an overhead, and that means you have to do a lot of user training and super user training. So they have to understand key concepts of SharePoint, which can actually be quite confusing. Things like sites, lists, libraries, security, which, well, you can train them, can drive low adoption because it adds complexities, and the manual approach can also cause errors, which we'll touch on later. And how do you manage change as well? So if you need an update to your solution, how do you manage that? You may probably have to go in and make changes into the production solution, which is far from ideal. And in reality, and my experience is that while you can use standard SharePoint in the future, you invariably need to bring in additional tooling to help manage your SharePoint environments and your SharePoint solutions. So while you don't think you need a tool initially, quite often you do. And it's quite often perceived as it's cheaper to implement just using SharePoint functionality, but that's probably more of a short-term than a long-term view. So the alternative option is to customize SharePoint. And this is an approach and a very valid approach, but it does increase the time to implement. It tends to be single solution focused. So, you build a custom solution for a very specific business challenge, and then that's locked in time. And then, the developers disappear, and then it can't be extended. It's very costly to build. The skills required are very specialized and hard to find. And it's very hard to predict how much effort is required to develop the solution. So you have a risk of scope extension, but also the amount of effort required to build that solution. And similarly, they're hard to manage and maintain. So what happens if Microsoft make a change to the Microsoft 365 platform or SharePoint Online is now a cloud service. They're constantly updating and making changes. How do you manage and maintain that? Do you have to have a support contract to ensure that any changes can be fixed in a relatively short period of time? And also, how do you maintain, how do you update the solution to align with the business needs, the current business needs? And they're typically unforeseen costs. So while custom solutions are very valid, they tend to be costly, time intensive, and carry a level of risk with them. So this is why we built WorkPoint. So the WorkPoint solutions are very template driven. We also have standard solutions. So we have things like HR, quality, project management, case management, contract management solutions. So we have standard solutions so that you can kind of install and they're pre-configured. But we also have a lot of configuration options, so you can build your own solutions as well. And the thing is, it's configuration versus customizations. There's no code required. What's the consequence of this? It reduces the time to implement and the cost, but you can also calculate the cost up front. So, you know, it's very easy for a consultant to work out how much it takes to configure a solution within WorkPoint versus building a custom solution. The WorkPoint's being built as a scalable platform to scale in line with Microsoft 365. So not only is it can scale to extremely large enterprise type solutions, but you can also have multiple solutions. So you're not building just one solution for one business need. You can actually combine HR, project, quality management, contract management as multiple solutions, and there's no additional overhead of doing that. As I say, it's a managed platform. We're responsible for managing the platform. We're responsible for providing support and fixes. And if Microsoft make a change, we're responsible for fixing those issues if they arise. But also, what happens when Microsoft introduces a new service or a new functionality? We're constantly looking at our roadmap and introducing and finding the best ways to introduce Microsoft technologies and Microsoft 365 technologies within the WorkPoint sphere. You'll hear this often, but we drive adoption through simplicity. So we've really taken away all the complexities of SharePoint, so the users don't have to think about SharePoint. They just need to think about the business, what they need to do on a day-to-day basis. And we can also update solutions, and we can update to reflect your current business needs. So we have mechanisms that allow you to change things within your solution as you need. So in the bottom left, I think the value is really about enabling Microsoft 365 platform, driving adoption, and also providing a governance with a platform approach. So what I wanted to do was kind of touch on three core tenets or three core areas of WorkPoint that I think really kind of help bridge that gap. There's a lot more, and as I say, it's not just SharePoint, but today's topic's really around SharePoint. So structural governance, a bit of a formal term, but it's really about making sure that you have a good structure of your content. So what are the challenges that you have potentially with just a standard SharePoint solution? So I've kind of put the tagline of "Don't fall foul to anarchy," because you know we've had and we still have this siteful issue where you know users are empowered, and Microsoft really do empower the users to go and be able to create new sites, new areas, new containers to store their content, which is great. But it can cause chaos. It can cause unnecessary clutter, noise, sites that are no longer required, or sites that are created but never used. So you have to be cognizant of that, and then you need to be able to have some sort of lifecycle management and control over that. Microsoft do provide some tooling around this, but we feel we provide a very good solution for this issue. And then you've got the converse where the administrators put in a lot of controls, but this creates barriers. So now you've taken the empowerment from the users and you put it into the hands of the administrator. So the end user can't do anything and it has to be a service request or something like that. So we still want to be able to give the users some empowerment, but in a controlled way. Microsoft, a good few years back now, flattened the world. They used to have a kind of a hierarchical model where you could have sub-sites and things like that. They rightly kind of flattened the world. This was a good decision, but people still like to think of content and their lives in hierarchies. So people like to work in hierarchies from things like folder structures, but also organizational hierarchies. People understand how to store and manage content in hierarchies. Microsoft have introduced hub sites and things like that, and the ability to have child sites, but they're not truly a hierarchical. They're more of a hub and spoke type approach that links sites together. Finding and navigating workspaces or sites can be very challenging in standard SharePoint because there's no relationship between these. And I'll go into the WorkPoint structure in a minute, but we solve this issue by kind of providing a very intuitive way of navigating around sites and being able to find them. SharePoint natively supports a lot of metadata, but at the same time, sites and workspaces only have a very minimal amount of metadata, typically a title and a description, and that's all you get for a site. The content can have a lot of metadata, but if you have a site for a project, that project can only really have a title and a description by default. I'll use the analogy of projects in this for the demonstrations. So I don't need to go through all of these points, and I won't go through all of them. The slides will be available, but as I said already, Microsoft only provides some limited templates. I'll show that functionality, but the richness and whatever else we've built in really empowers these sites, and templating is a key concept of WorkPoint. So we provide governance via a very intuitive structure. So as I say, people like to think of things in hierarchy. So if you think of this model here, or this solution structure, so we have a companies or customers, it could be. So we have what we call a business module called companies, and within that company business module or company, you can have one or more companies, and each company can have content associated. So maybe emails about the company, documents, events, notes, etc. But also a company may have a number of contacts. So a contact can be another business module, and you can relate. So there's a one-to-many relationship where you can have a company that has many contacts. And again, you can store metadata and information about the contacts. And then projects, you can have a projects business module, and typically projects are delivered for a customer or company. So a company can have multiple projects related to it. And again, within a project, you might have project artifacts such as risks, project description, project brief, project plans, etc. So within a project business module, you can store content. And I won't go into transmittals, but again, it just shows that a project could actually have one or more transmittals related to it. So it's very much a hierarchical model, but it provides very good structure to your SharePoint solution. So what do? We provide implicit structure and governance. So we empower the users for them whilst you're confident that your solution's being governed. So we can do things like we can control who can create workspaces, and then integrate this with your line of business systems or your organizational processes. As I say, you can create multiple business modules. You can create multiple solutions as well, and very much in a hierarchy to relate things to each other. It's very easy to navigate, and you have directories of things like projects or customers or contacts. You can add additional metadata to your workspaces, so you can actually decorate with them. So if a customer, if they had a VAT number or an address or primary contacts, you can have that sort of information associated with it. Likewise, with a project, you can have a project ID or project manager, or project responsible or project team, etc. And you can create your own workspace templates and ensure they're always up to date, but also align with your business processes. So whilst we have standard solutions, you can actually tailor those to what you need to do within your organization. And then we have things like rule-based archiving of your workspaces. So, what happens to a project when the project is completed? Do you need to retain that information? Do you need to delete it? What do you do with it? Or does it become a system of record where it's actually archived? So these are just a couple of things that we bring to SharePoint, working via WorkPoint. So I think, like many of these things, it's best to show in demo. So I will just jump into a solution here. So here I'm in a WorkPoint solution. It is, if you're familiar with WorkPoint, this is our toolbar. Or if you're not familiar, I've got my active projects, I've got some recent tasks, I've got some active customers, etc. So this is a solution homepage. And if you open up the WorkPoint toolbar, I can see the hierarchy. So in this case, I've got customers and I've got projects. So I can come in to the project area, and I can see a list of projects. So before I jump in and manage my projects within here, what I want to show is what you would do in a standard SharePoint solution. So if I come back up here and I just come into SharePoint. So SharePoint here, I can go and create a new site for a project, and I might call my site and I'll call it Gemini. It just checks the email and site address. I can give it a description, as I say. Gemini. I can say whether it's private or public. In this case, I create it as private, and I can set the language. And that's really all I can do. The great thing is it's very quick now, and that's created me my project site. So I can finish there. I'm just going to close this for now. But what you get by default is kind of the standard SharePoint site. And as a user, I would have to come in here and I would have to do things like maybe create some lists, go and store content, maybe some document libraries, create some pages, etc. But I have to start from scratch, typically. Microsoft has introduced the ability to go and apply site templates, and that was the wizard I kind of closed down. But I can apply a site template. This is exactly the same. And I do have a project management template. So I can come in here and I can see some details, and I can say use the template. This is really quick, and this is a far better experience than Microsoft have had for a while. And the nice thing is here I get the same site, same content. I've got some lists added here, some tracker lists, some document libraries. But in reality, I don't have a hell of a lot here, because even if I go down here, oh, it's gone, these aren't actual live content. It's really kind of just placeholders for you to actually go and edit and manage. So the user still has to come in here and manage these lists and trackers and these project contacts, these tools. It's all just sample content. So they're really just giving you a starter. It's not actually a defined template. So for instance, if I wanted to, as a user, and I had a area that I want to go and create budget information for this project, I can spell. I still have to come in here and create a site. So that's very manual, also a library, but also then maybe have to go and create metadata around this as well. So the user has to come in and say maybe who is the person responsible for approval, or what's the target budget, or what's the completion date, etc. What's the project ID? All of this has to be added manually, which can be trained, but it's prone to errors, and it ends up with every project site being slightly different. This can add confusion to the users, and also you can lose information because people aren't necessarily tracking the right metadata around documents. So I'll go back to my ultimate demo, and also what we have. Also, one thing just to notice, this Gemini site is very standalone. It's not related to anything. It's not related to a customer. It's not related to any other projects. I don't really know that it's a project site. And as I say, it has no other metadata apart from a title and a description. So if we take the WorkPoint approach, is in my solution, I have project customers, so I can see my list of customers, and I have projects. So I'll be focused on projects very much in this demo, but I have a list of projects. But you can see straight away that I have quite a lot of metadata. I have things like project manager, project team, the country it's associated, the stage of the project. It's been given a project ID through our numbering system, project type. So a lot of metadata around the project. So you're no longer just restricted to, and this will help searching. So I can do things like, okay, well, just show me projects that are maybe related to these countries. Now I can just see the projects related to those countries. Or maybe it's by project manager. I just want to see the ones where Chris is the project manager. So I can quickly come in and maybe find, because I'm logged in, maybe I'm logged in as Chris, and I can just find quickly my projects. So this is what we kind of call our directories. So I have a directory of my projects. But maybe now I'm logged in as an administrator, but it could be any user, and I want to go and create a new project. And I can come in here and create a new project. This is our WorkPoint wizard that guides the user through the process. So we can control who can actually create one. Maybe you don't want everyone in your organization creating projects, or maybe it's someone in the PMO function that can. So I'll create one called Genesis, and maybe this is related to stock industries. The project manager might be Jesper and Chris and Trina maybe are part of the project team, and I can maybe give it a project deadline so that somewhere in the future, and I can say what type of project, and I can give it a description. And save. So what WorkPoint is now doing is actually creating a site, but what we're doing is we're creating it based on a template. So you can define your own templates, and it's really, really quick. We're also putting security on it and everything else. So you saw within less than 30 seconds, a new project was created. So you can see that the layout, all the content's actually live and works. I've got things like tasks as well. Here, I've actually got live cards that show information about the project manager, because I said Jesper was the project manager. I can see Chris and Trina are part of the project team. I have an information card up here that shows me all the information that I entered about the project, so the customer, the country, the title. I can go and see what the description was. I can see just information just about the project team. I also have things like I have a stage model as well. So I can see that it's like at the development stage, but I can go through construction, operations, re-energize, and archived. So it's really created a structure based on a template, but it's not only about the pages, but also about the library. So in here, I've got a project documents area as well. And here I can see that there's metadata associated. It's some content already put in here. It's got document IDs. It's got the customer, and I didn't even have to put in this metadata. It's automatically been inherited into the documents. So it's automatically auto-tagged the content, for want of a better word. And yeah, likewise, I've got a budget document library. I've got things like, my task list as well. So within minutes, I've actually got a very structured project with a lot of governance built into it. So one thing you'll also see is I selected Stark Industries as the parent. So again, from a navigation perspective and being able to find, I can come back here. I can see, information about Stark Industries. I can go in here and find all the projects related to Stark Industries as well. But it's all about providing good navigation and easy ways to find and navigate things. Again, I can come back here and I can type in, I think I call it Genesis. And I can just search for my project within the project directory as well. So that's what I wanted to show for structural governance. But the main thing here is just showing you that it is really kind of having core structure and having templates that can be modified to your business needs or tailored to your business needs, but they can also be updated. So for instance, if I came in here and in the future I wanted an additional document library, maybe for confidential information, I could go and create that in my template and publish that to all my projects. So every project site has a consistent look and feel. Okay, come back to the slides. Just conscious of time. I've probably gone slightly behind, so I'll speed up a little bit. So security. So security is key in most solutions. Who can do what, where. And I think people underestimate the effort it is to manage security. SharePoint has a very strong security model, but it's not user-friendly. Users tend not to understand it, and it can even be complex for seasoned administrators. And it's very, you have to go into individual areas to go and manage the security. So, like some of the issues and challenges that you might face is, who can manage the security? What level should they have? Are you sure that content is being secured correctly? And what happens if it's not? What happens if you're sharing content externally to third parties and someone gets access to content they shouldn't have? How do you manage it at scale? So if you've got hundreds of projects or thousands of cases, how do you manage that security? And are you confident again that the users are managing it correctly? Are your data protection policies being enforced? And how do you know what content was shared, when, and to who? So these are some of the challenges that you commonly face with SharePoint standard solutions. So we kind of say we can secure with confidence. We have a very strong rule-based engine that can control the security. So it can control, via dynamic or permissions. So when we say dynamic, it can be based on a role. So maybe the project manager gets one role and the project team get another role. It can be conditional. So maybe the permissions change during the life cycle of a project. Maybe during development, maybe when a project gets to a certain stage, you want to include more people into the project. It's very granular as well, so we support site level or the directory level. We support workspaces, we support lists, libraries, and even item level security. You can apply security through SharePoint and WorkPoint Office 365 groups. We can also control how sharing happens, so whether that's sharing to internal users or to external users. And you can have what we call custom permission levels. And even talking through this list, you have to understand SharePoint, you have to understand permission levels. What we do is we extrapolate all of that, so users don't have to. It's up to the configurator to configure WorkPoint, and WorkPoint manages the security for you, so it's kind of very seamless. So I just want to show a quick demo of this. So on this Genesis project, we'll take this as an example. I put a guy on the team. The project manager was Jesper, and the project team had Chris and Trina as the project team. So through our rule-based configuration, I set up that only a project manager should be able to see, to be able to edit project information, but they only, and also only a project manager should be able to see the budget and external libraries. So if I come in here and I go to my Genesis, I can see that Jesper here, he has access and he can come in to that list or into that site. I can see that he can come in and edit the metadata around the project, and that he can come and see budget and external content on that site. So for this project, he is the project manager. But if I went to another project, and we'll look at this project Chase, where Chris is actually the project manager and Jesper is just part of the project team. So I can come in here. And now I don't have the ability to edit the information around the project. And if I come here, I can't see the budget or the external document libraries. So again, you can control what users can see and what users can actually do in the system. We typically kind of recommend, the least privilege model, where you give the users as little access as possible, and that way you can really control what they should or shouldn't be able to do. Interestingly as well, if I swap back my user and I come here, I'm logged in as an administrator, so I have access to a whole list of projects. But if I come in as Jesper, he can't see any project where he is not a member of the project team or project manager, so his list is shorter. Maybe if I actually log in as Chris, and I'll see Chris's list here is shorter again. Okay, just wanted that. So content management is the final of the three that I wanted to touch on today. So what are the challenges? Content is kind of, or documents by their nature are quite unstructured. So how do you bring structured to unstructured data? How do users find information if there's no metadata? Why can't the system do the hard work for me? It's really around auto tagging information, making sure content is tagged with the right information. Maybe it's the project ID or the project owner, that sort of metadata. why do I need to go and tag that when the system already knows that information? So we do a lot of auto tagging. SharePoint document numbering, in my experience, is not a robust numbering system. I've never seen it used in production. And a lot of organizations need a document numbering system. Do users know where to put the content? If you don't have a good structure, then do people know where to put the content? And especially if you don't have a standardized folder structure, people will create new folders or create miscellaneous folders and just dump content into the wrong areas, and then it becomes lost information, and that information is key to any organizations. How do you create and manage your content from templates as well, especially when you have, in many organizations, you can have hundreds, if not thousands of templates. How can you make sure that users are using the latest version of the template, but also the right template, and how do they find that template as easily as possible? And then how, So what do we do? I'm not going to go through all of these, but we kind of make sure that the metadata is standardized. We can support batch processing of documents. We support the easy creation of PDFs and merging of PDFs. We have a document numbering. We can support standardized folder structures. These are all features and functionality that you don't get with standard SharePoint. So I just want to show this quickly of some of the features that we support. So I'll jump back into my demo environment. So if I I'll jump into a different environment or solution for this, and I'll go in and I'll find a project called Carbon Bearing. And I can see this has a different layout. This is a different project type. I can see documents, and I can see that there's a lot of metadata around these documents and a lot of content already being produced. It's even got the project status in here. It's got the document ID, etc. But so with standard SharePoint, if I want to go and create a document, I will just go to this solution here. I have to create templates and add templates to each site or to what we call content types in SharePoint. But the issue you have here, and I've set this up just for the demo purposes, is you're kind of limited to the number of document templates you can have, because imagine if you had 100 or 1,000 or 50 even templates, this list will get very unmanageable. You have no way of controlling what projects or what libraries kind of get this information. You have to set it up all very manually, which is a real overhead to manage, but also from the user perspective to find the right template. It does offer great functionality. I can go and create a product description. It gives me that nice document. I can modify it in Word, so I can get my document template. But the problem is I have to now go in and maybe put in the name of the project, put in the date, put in the author, etc. This metadata I have to do, which is manual overhead and can also be prone to error. So in WorkPoint, we do it slightly differently. If I come back to this carbon bearing projects, I can create a new document from a wizard. And it's actually a wizard approach that you're kind of guided through. Hopefully. Apologies, this seems to be a bit slow, but I can create a webinar. And here I can select templates. The power of this is I've got only a few templates here, but we support hundreds, if not thousands of templates. I've got the ability to search for to find the template I want to use. I have things like views, but also what maybe is not being shown here is I can also target templates. So I have a single central repository for all my templates across my whole organization. And I can say for projects, make these templates available. So I've just made only a few templates available. So I can select project description. And what you'll notice here is we've got these, it might be a bit hard to see, but these references in chevrons to information. So what that allows us to do, and this is our templating solution, allows you to pull in information from the project. So if I go back up to this carbon bearing project, I can see there's a project. There's not much information being shown here, but there's metadata associated with the project. So if I go and create that document quickly. Select that template, select product description, save and edit online. Just take a second to create this document and save it into the location. Here I can now see that the project number's been included, the project title, the company is related to, so the parent even, the project start date, completion date, etc. So, and we can even introduce information from other sources within the project, such as the project status report, or you could bring in the project task, etc. So it's really rich kind of templating functionality that we support here. So if I come back and I close this document, I've shown you the inherited metadata. I can see here that this webinar document that I created got a document ID, and shortly I'll get its project status. Sometimes you don't want to create a single document either. Sometimes you want to be able to create multiple documents at the same time. So I can create a document set. I'm very conscious that we're running over time, so apologies. I can come down here and I can create reports, and I can create multiple documents at the same time. I won't show that for now. So the final thing I just wanted to show very quickly before we conclude was content isn't always documents. So if I go to my case management solution, and I'll go to a case revision 2021. I might have a case in this example, and I might have some tasks. Now, a user can obviously come in and go to others and to tasks and go and create a new task manually. But quite often, you'll actually have a defined set of tasks for all projects. So what I can do is click this button here, which we've set up to create tasks. So I get a full list of tasks, but I can also go down and say, maybe I just want the insurance tasks, and I can go and save that. And what that's going to do very quickly is create my set of tasks in the system. So now those tasks have been created, but importantly, what you see here is also what we can do is do things such as setting the due date based on rules. So actually here, the rule that is hopefully saying in 2 weeks' time or in a week's time, that task should be completed. And I'm also being assigned to Chris. Well, it's actually been creating the tasks for me. And the final thing I wanted to show is also documents. If I want to have a standard structure, I'll just delete these folders for now. Maybe I want to create folders for a standard structure. So it's not just about document content, it's about structural content such as tasks, lists, risks, issues, folders we've got. So in this case, I've only got a 3-folder structure. I'll just go and create that. So you can define these as part of your organizational structure. So there we go. So every project can have these, and maybe you want to go and create folder structures at a certain point in the life cycle of a project, because they should only be created when maybe it's at a project charter or a project design or requirements phase. Okay, I'm very conscious that we've run over by a few minutes, so I just wanted to say, you know, the whole concept of SharePoint of WorkPoint is to make SharePoint easy, remove all the complexities. The users don't need to think about things like permissions. They just need to assign roles. We can create templates. We can restrict who can create content. You know, we improve the navigation by having site directories and project directories. And creating content is really only one click away. We have wizards that actually help guide users through the whole process. So apologies, it was a bit rushed at the end, but I will open the floor to any questions. Anders, if there has been any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Don, for a great presentation here. So at this point, we don't really have any questions yet, but I will give the attendees just a minute to publish some last-minute questions here. In the meantime, I can maybe plug a little bit of information here. So if you want more information about WorkPoint and our products, we highly recommend that you visit our YouTube channel, WorkPoint 365 Explore. There you can find some very interesting interviews, both with partners and customers and internal WorkPoint employees, and among others, Dominick Cosgrove here. And you can also find our weekly video series, which is called WorkPoint Tips and Tricks, where we publish weekly tips and tricks about the WorkPoint product and how you can get the most out of it. So visit that channel and see if you can find anything interesting for you. And please, if you do, please like and subscribe. It'll help us out a lot. So you can also visit, of course, our homepage and contact us directly if you have any questions related to any of the topics you hear today, or anything you might find interesting and want more information about. So Dom, I see we still don't have any questions. So I guess the attendees must have gotten all the information they wanted, and at this point don't have any. So yeah, so I don't think for now there's anything left to do than to say thank you very much for attending, everybody, and we hope that you have a very nice day. So thank you very much for attending.
Thank you very much. Take care.